meeting to order with our new cloth over our shoulder, which has now been put on Greenwich Mean Time, -5 hours. Anyway, thank you all for coming. First order of business, you sent out the minutes, and I think...
Yeah, did everyone have enough time to read them? Okay.
Is there any discussion on the minutes, any oversight, insight, or...
Amendments?
Amendments.
I sent them out without really proofreading them too much, so.
Okay, and the short form that I asked about it for Diane, did you...
I asked you, did you?
I didn't receive it yet.
Okay, just here.
That's okay.
I wrote it on my list too.
Okay.
I don't, no.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And thank you to Diane. Okay.
Okay, we have Public Works here today.
Yes, good evening.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Doug Damko, the new Public Works Director of Littleton. This for 9 months, been here. So I came in beginning of February, so got the tail end of last winter. And yeah, been getting familiar with the department and working closely with our crew, our Public Works crew, and learning their operations. And got some really good guys working for me, 2 foremen, and the rest of the guys are truck drivers and a mechanic. And been real helpful learning through the budget process as we went, basically tracking the numbers that were already budgeted for last year and kind of seeing our progress through the year on various items. I think my focus for this year, which I presented to the select board, is really our vehicles and trying to put together a more formalized analysis and plan for our vehicles and trying to see what we need for replacing and staying on schedule with our vehicles. So I'll have information later on to provide on that.
Doug came to us from the other side of the river, which around here usually means the other side of Connecticut, but it's from the other side of a few rivers.
Yeah.
Coming from?
Other side of the Rockies.
Yes. California.
Yeah, California. Yeah. So my background is mostly project engineering, so we kind of transitioned into public works, which is a little more broader arena, and it's been good. Been learning a lot. But from a budget standpoint, worked closely with Karen just to understand our operating budget, and one of our foremen who's been doing it for a few years, just to get a feel for where our department prioritizes its budget. And so Karen, I think, is going to go over that detail on the operating budget, and then after that I'll talk about vehicles.
So I'll pass those that can go around.
You have one.
Disagree on that side.
We have something on the edges, and then see this.
I know I have some extras.
Not currently. Historically, that happened on occasion.
Not yet. There we go.
And there should be 1 or 2 more there, so.
I'll take one. Jim, you got one for Jim right there? Okay. Anybody else need?
Okay. Just a quick review of the default. Public Works Department. And I want to make sure that the top piece, if you look on your left-hand side, you're going to see Public Works Department. And this is the garage, the highway crew. They also do some sewer work. So this part of the budget is those individuals, and then we have the admin part that's broke out separately. So under the default, there's very little changes. We have, of course, a rate change on retirement, and that is it for the default. We have a reduction from 2019 approved, which is $414. It's a 0.03% reduction from 2019.
Karen, did you jump ahead? What the hell?
Administrative is the first one that you handed out there.
Oh, I got the wrong one. Sorry. I had administrative underneath that. So let me switch my papers around.
We can switch ours around.
I know, that's okay. Well, under Public Works Administration, under default, we now have the Public Works Director in here for the full year. Last year, when we brought the budget forward, it was only calculated for 11 months. And we did note how much it was going to be for a full year. And then we have the full year for the health insurance. So the default is $10,047 more than 2019's approved, and that's a 10% increase. Under the proposed for the Public Works Administration, we have adjusted the total from the sewer budget from 25% to 33%. Realistically, this year, it might be a little more than that, but on a normal year, we figure about 1/3 of the time would be sewer related. So doing that adjustment, the increase between 2019's approved and 2020's proposed is $3,841. It's a 4% increase. One of the numbers that has increased in the proposed is the professional services lines. We also removed the second professional services line that was in here for $500, and I'm not sure why we had two lines for professional services, so we took that one out.
Current professional services would be to retain
Survey
Engineer,
work,
surveyor, environmental
specialized
consultant.
engineering, would also pertain to some help getting grants, road work grants, sewer-related grants, matches for grants if we can go out and try to get some grants, even for equipment. So under Public Works Department, I've already talked about default. The number's not a lot of difference. In the proposed, we have some staff changes. So in those staff changes, there's some reduction and some savings in cost. We also have an increase in temporary positions. Next year, we're hoping to add a second part-time winter person on. In the 2020 proposed, we have some adjustments with the health insurance, different plans, different people taking different plans. That's basically unpredictable. We estimate it, and it's for the current staff that we have on board right now. Telephone communications, there is an increase there. Our internet service is a little more than what has been budgeted for over the last couple of years. We have a little bit of an increase in professional service computer upgrades. We're hoping to get a new software program that will make it easier for projects to be tracked, equipment to be tracked, FEMA projects to be tracked. We found during this last storm in 2017 that it was hard to track those expenditures, and it took a lot of documentation. So what we have for a system down there, computer system down at the Public Works Garage, was here before I came, and I came to Littleton in 2002. 2002. So it's very, very old. We have some added painting cost. The traffic painting for sidewalks and roads is a little more expensive every year. We need to resupply the safety cones, the construction sign packages. We have an increase in salt cost, and that is an estimate every year, and then the proposed we have almost a $10,000 increase there.
In cost or quantity, or both?
Both. So the proposed budget for 2020 is $9,005 over 2019's approved. It's a 0.76% increase.
Okay, question. So with the reimbursement from the sewer, I see up here under permanent positions, you have sewer reimbursement 5%, and it's a negative $15,425. If we hadn't increased the amount that we're receiving from the sewer reimbursement, this would be $24,000, right?
You're looking at the admin budget, or you're looking at?
I'm looking at the public works, the permanent positions, down at the very bottom of permanent positions, just above line 2, in the default and in the approved detail and in the proposed, there's a negative $15,000, and it's over to the side, it says sewer reimbursement 5%.
Now, the reason why the public work employees, not the director, is different is the public works employees, the program that we do have, and hopefully the new program will do the same thing, we are able to track the hours and bill out the hours that an employee actually works, an hourly employee works for the sewer department and the highway department. So when, and I'll use Ralph Lucas as an example because he works the most for the sewer, he can put on his timesheet or his work order that's for sewer, and then when we get the sheet to break down the hours, it will show the number of hours he worked for the sewer department. So we're able to bill that out directly. We don't catch every little hour or every little half hour. That's why there's been a 5% number here for as long as I know of. But we're able to catch a majority of their hours that they work for the sewer department.
So that 5% is not a new
No, that's not new.
method?
No.
Right.
That, I think, has been in there for a long time in doing budgets.
Okay.
So, can I ask a question? So, just to be clear on that, so that 5% is just intended to be just some sort of accounting measure to try to account for the amount of time spent in the sewer.
Yes.
Okay.
That is.
But isn't that what the,
Sorry.
so isn't that what the adjustment to 33%, isn't that doing the same thing?
Well, Doug is salaried. So we have an individual that's salaried versus somebody.
Oh, I see, you're applying that to administration, not to, I got you. Okay, so that's a way to it's a way to capture it through staff as well.
Right.
Okay.
And staff are able, through that work order process, are able to include that in their work time record. So we have a clearer idea and we're able to bill out that right directly to the sewer when we're processing payroll.
So we're not able to do that now, you will be able to with the new software?
We're able to do it now,
Okay.
but it's not as accurate. When we get the new software, hopefully we'll be able to break everything out clearer.
So the 15,427, is that a reconciled number that, or is that just what was budgeted and that's
Just
just there?
5% of the gross wages,
Yep,
not including the winter stipends or the weather call-out, because usually don't have that with sewer.
I understand, but has anybody gone through the exercise of seeing how that 5% compares to what is actually happening?
I don't think it's been done for quite a while.
So,
Sorry,
no, go ahead.
that's it.
I had a question on the health insurance. It looks like it's 139,255, 139,355, then it goes down to 132,629. But it says it's a 2.2 increase, change in plans, where it's gone down. Should that be a decrease?
There should be a comma after the 2.2, because they're two separate items. The 2.2% increases in the plans overall, but then,
Okay.
and then there are changes in plans for the individual employees.
Okay.
A different mix.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
we have a different mix in the proposed budget.
Okay. Thank you.
I have another question.
I don't know who's
No,
on
I'm sorry, I can't see it.
Sorry, you already answered.
What is the what is the intent of the second part-time person? What is it, what are they gonna be, what do you need them for, what are they gonna be doing?
In the, do you want me to answer it?
That's fine, I can chime in.
In the Public Works Department, there has occasionally been a temporary part-time person beyond your regular part-time person. You might have somebody that would be available for emergencies. If there was a major snowstorm, somebody needed a break, somebody was on vacation, somebody got hurt or got sick, you had somebody to call in. So having a second person there relieves some of that pressure and stress of, you know, what are we gonna do if a couple trucks break down and we have people in working on them? Who can we get a hold of to come in case there's a major snowstorm? So it's allowing a second person to be there, helping fill in some of the space, some of the time.
Is there any intent to have that second person positively impact the potential overtime?
In terms of reducing it?
Yeah, that would be positive to me.
Our overtime's driven by the storm events.
I understand.
So really, the guys that are on there, when they get called in after hours, it's overtime no matter what.
Yeah, but if you have another part-time person to call on, would you be less likely to have someone on overtime, or is that not realistic?
Nah, it's really not realistic. We could use them for enhanced. We run 2 in the summer, and I'm just trying to maybe match up for the winter. Maybe even improve services. Maybe get more sidewalk plowing or more cycles of sidewalk plowing in, or have that opportunity to enhance services more during the winter. We get a lot of requests all the time for enhanced services, particularly during the winter. So having that person would be helpful for that too.
Question on line 14, the professional services / roadside mowing. Is that just exclusively for roadside mowing, or does that encompass other professional services? That, because we've only done 1,700 plus year to date and we budgeted 18, so does that compose anything else or just?
At this time,
As far as I know, it's
yeah,
just
it's
that.
just mowing.
We didn't do what we really should have this year as far as how much roadside mowing. We should be doing a certain number of miles a year of roadside. We've let it go for I don't know how long. I think we just started back in 2018. We started back to doing it, cutting it back, and it's a safety issue and a road maintenance issue that's just been neglected. And so really it's subbing it out to the outside firm, hitting the worst areas first and then getting back to a regular cycle.
So that line item's been running a surplus, so to speak,
This year.
just this year.
Yeah, right. Well, I think
The
we
goal
just-
is to get it back on track with
Yeah,
that.
I think we just reintroduced it back in 2018, so it would have been the second year.
So you anticipate, now when does this budget conclude, in March or in
In December. December
So you're
31st.
going to be running a surplus this year, or this is the first year that you're going to be surplus?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been unbalanced, right?
It will.
It doesn't go into another reserve account?
Unless we encumber it. If the selectmen choose to encumber it for something specific, something they might have a PO on or an agreement on at the end of the year, something that's got to be done, but it can't be done until the beginning of the next year.
Yeah, it has to be committed, like
Yes.
to something that's actually in process. They can't just, say, yeah, we're gonna save those funds for earmark it for next year. They have to actually have it committed. So,
But it could still go to the unencumbered or
Yes,
yes.
unencumbered,
Yeah.
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 Is there any other questions on the public works side?
Vehicle repairs, that you've been obviously budgeting a lot because of the age of the vehicles. But it looks like we're going to be running a surplus there as well. A healthy one, is that realistic?
Hopefully, if
All things hold.
Yeah, we've got some vehicles that are beyond repair. Why continue putting huge dollars into a vehicle that breaks down on a regular
Take
basis?
it out of service.
We had 3 vehicles go out of service this year, and it's part of my presentation that I'll cover later, that kind of the select board's already heard it, that talk about that particularly.
So do you, I know you're gonna talk about vehicles later, but am I understanding that one of the reasons that the vehicle repairs has not been spent is because 3 vehicles have been taken out of service, so you're not repairing them?
I would say that's I mean, I can't say absolutely for sure, but that seems to be an indicator of why.
Do we have software we can actually track how much is spent on each vehicle?
We don't, that's what our current program is not doing.
So that's what we're
The
looking
new one
at.
will do?
Yes.
So that would be nice too, to see, all right, is there,
Yep.
especially as you go through with your plan.
I agree.
Oh, you know what, this is a, last more better than we thought it would. We can get another year.
So that's-
We have had programs we've tried to do that with. I mean, usually the thing with it is that, you know, sometimes it gives you the answer after the fact, you know, that. you know,
Not if it's the right program.
Well, I mean, the highway business is a heavy maintenance business, a little bit different than, certainly different than the police department. You know what I mean? You know, the way those vehicles are used, there's a lot more wear and tear, and you expect a fair amount of failure, if you would, on certain components that just need to get, in the life of the vehicle, will get replaced, you know, more than once. It's not like there's some aspect of that vehicle that you would hope never to have to work on while it's in its service life. I mean, that may get worked on 3 or 4 times before that vehicle is actually retired. So where the line is in terms of spending more or not spending more, but the biggest thing that happens is that once you get to that point and you make that investment, then you're going to want to keep it for another 2 or 3 years because you've done it. If you could have foreseen it coming and didn't have to do it, you may have wanted to trade it ahead of time. But, you know, whether it's the logging business, the plowing business, the construction business, I mean, you know, it's the same challenge that Frank Dodge and Clinton Clough and Chris Crow and everybody else faces.
So,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, no, go ahead.
Well, I keep hearing about the software. Am I seeing it, is that in the data processing line? Is that what there's, where's the
That
cost
is
of that
just the
software?
maintenance of the new software.
Where's the cost of the software?
That's part of the FEMA money that you've authorized that the highway
Purchasing
department
of that?
purchased. And they're still looking over what's out there for,
I'm talking to Franco about one that's got some GIS integration. I will talk to him soon.
So let's go back to that. So we did a project, this is my interpretation, this is terrible interpretation. So we did a project that we could get FEMA reimbursement, right? So the town put money out to fix something, and then we applied for FEMA funds, right? Is that how it goes?
in 2017, we had a rain event. It was quite a rain event. And we didn't know at the time whether it would qualify for FEMA or not, but the roads have to be fixed.
Right.
So the employees go out, fix the road, use equipment, use materials, and then we try to submit everything through FEMA to get reimbursed. They will sometimes approve things pretty quickly, sometimes they don't. We didn't start getting reimbursement till the end of 2018. So the selectmen, the money's been spent. It came out of the taxpayer money that was used to
I'm understanding that.
budget that. The selectmen can accept and expend funds and authorize where those funds go to.
And how much was that from? Those,
We're still getting money in, but at this
So-
point,
yeah. So
we're
like
back.
multiple distributions, some were as small as like $8,000, I think, and then the biggest one that we received was probably 25, 30.
About 30,000 was
30,000.
the biggest one, and there's still some project activity that has to go on with that one. We have another one that we're actually gonna have a warrant article on that needs a bigger chunk of money from the taxpayers. That FEMA's paying 75% of it, but in order to do the road work that needs to be done, we need additional funds.
And there's really, so like when the ones that I'm familiar with that we work with, there's really 2 different methods of FEMA application. So the first step is that the governor actually declares a natural disaster and then finds that your county had enough damage that it equals whatever trigger point they need. We have to do the repairs no matter what. These are emergency repairs. So if it's declared a natural disaster, we can qualify for things up to 75%, 70 to 75% of state funds, or federal funds, I'm sorry. Sometimes the state will then later kick in another percentage to help offset those costs. Then also there's the mitigation fund. So what those are is, you'll take a look at something like, for example, on Mansfield, there's a box culvert there that we've been looking at for a while. And so the box culvert itself can cause damage to the road. It actually, I think, was part of an issue causing flooding and damage to his home. And so what they'll do is you take and do a build out and a budget of what it would cost to repair that structure itself and replace it.
Something better.
So say it was $200,000 to do a replacement. They then have a formula that they apply to it to see, is the cost benefit of $200,000 going to prevent, and I don't remember what the formula is, it's like 1.5% or something, or 1.5%. Basically, we have to show that infrastructure replacement will mitigate future storm damages over, the initial investment. And so those are
You're talking
called,
the cost benefit ratio?
yeah, cost benefit ratio. And so those are called FEMA mitigation grants, which are, I'm not sure if that's what we were looking at.
Not for this.
No, not.
Well, where I was going with this, very simply, was that, so we got reimbursement for a project that we have to do, no doubt about it. But instead of coming back into the general fund, it's being authorized to be used in other ways. So I'm just trying to figure out how we kind of keep track of that too.
I have to keep track of it separate from the general fund budget, and also keep track of the expenditures that go out of it. Has to be whatever they approved for, which was additional highway expenditures for software, additional highway work. We do have some FEMA projects that need additional work to be completed on them. So that money was going to be used to...
Like an example is a Broomstick Hill Road. So like we did a Band-Aid job up there, and there'll be repeating issues if we don't do more work, which is what they've been planning right now. So with those funds, we could potentially, there's not enough to do the road that like it needs to be done, so we'll need to have a warrant article that we can qualify for the 70% or whatever. Max.
All right.
I've got a question on retaining walls in town, and I don't know, depending on who owns them, but do we do any maintenance on town-owned ones? And where is that reflected in the budget, or is it done on a warrant article basis, or how does that?
I mean, we've done major work. I think the major work we've done maybe 3 or 4 years ago was Church Street and Main Street retaining wall. That was falling into the road. In general, I think the practice in the town in the past has been, if it's holding up a property owner's land, it's their responsibility to maintain. If it's holding up a road, then it's the town responsibility to maintain. And so that's kind of how we've been moving forward. We have a pretty big book on documentation of all the retaining walls. I think Chad did that.
Yeah, you do have to check out the deeds, because sometimes the deed will say that the property pin goes to the inside of the retaining wall. So you do have to check deeds on a few of those.
Because the ones that I'm thinking of, I see quite frequently is on Grove Street, and the sidewalk there, every year they further deteriorate, there's stones piled up, and it's a mess, and I don't know whose responsibility it is.
So, going along on that, so the safety hazard, if there is a safety hazard.
Right, and
it
if
could be a safety hazard.
If it's a property owner's responsibility, who basically informs them that, hey, this is an issue, you either gotta,
It's a town planner, but okay.
But we've done retaining walls that were holding up property, not streets.
Right, but I think what Chad's point is it really depends on, like, once you dig in with you start with the.
And then it's even
Yeah.
another one is, this is on a state road or is it on a town road?
Yeah, so Meadow Street, Main Street and
Main
Church Street
Street.
was one of those. But we maintain, we've been maintaining the mortar and we did some mortar work and sealed coating on that after during the Church Street upgrade. But if somebody was, smart about defining their property, and they have the pin behind the wall that could
They're
indicate
no
that.
longer, yeah, so, and that one was, I think the street was, what, in the late 40s, early 50s is when they really made Main Street the way it is right now. You know,
I think they widened the street.
they widened, but I think they.
Which caused the need for a wall that before it just been a sloping
The
bank.
state did that, and then they created all that stuff, and they gave the responsibilities of the sidewalk to the town. And then, all right, so if the town is responsible for the sidewalk, the property owner only owns to the retaining wall,
Yeah,
then who's responsible for the,
clear as mud.
yeah.
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 So I think in most cases, it's probably in public interest and safety interest to either form a partnership or just get it done, so.
Definitely while we do have to study, a more comprehensive look at that does need to happen.
Because like I said, it is
Yeah.
becoming, every year, there's just more and more pieces of falling apart.
You want to find out after something has happened.
We had one of those at the corner of, is that, the lower road that goes by the school.
High Street?
High Street, yeah, High Street and, won't be SAU office, or the part of
Maple?
Maple Street, yeah.
So on this right here, in this department, there are no salary increases for non-union workers.
Correct.
I just want everyone to keep that
Correct.
in mind.
There are no salary increases for any union employees, which all of the permanent positions, with the exception of the Public Works Director, are considered union employees. The
So-
part-timers are not.
So that 9,000 or the 0.076% Public Works, the increase for the 2020 proposed, that does not include the salaries. So-
Correct.
Okay. Just have to put
I'm
that out there.
All right, next is the sewer users budget. The proposed,
In that packet, we had Public Works Administration in the place.
oh, that's
That's
probably
why.
why I got,
Yes, that's right. We have
we had a
number,
little problem with our copy.
well, that's right. We have it as number 1 and number 3.
It was probably me putting it in.
So at least I don't have to add one of them.
I know, that's good.
See page 1.
So sewer users subtotal should be on your left-hand side. The budget is for the sewer. At the very top, you're gonna see the revenue estimates. And a couple things that we've added in here is water pollution grant. And we added in the sewer DES reimbursement for projects, 20% approved projects. In other words, a lot of times we'll submit a grant for a sewer project. The state will approve 20%. They'll pay for 20% of that project. It may take us 5 years to get the money back, but when we get it back, we need a place to put it, rather than just putting it under a miscellaneous revenue or posting it back as a receivable against a grant. The auditors don't like to post receivables that are out 20 years because you're not guaranteed to get them, or receivables 5 years. Recently, we did, a couple years ago, get back some money over a 10-year grant that had been applied for. We never expected to get it. In fact, we had it as a uncollectible, thinking that it wouldn't come in after we were already awarded it, but we ended up getting, took a long process. So we put in some lines here just so we're able to take those funds in. Sewer users, under the default, the items on here that I've added is the sub-area 5 payment starts up. The 20-year loan that was on all of the improvements we did in sub-area 5 with the interest. We also have an estimated payment on sub-area 2, and it's just interest, because we wouldn't need to start paying the principal part of that until we took all the funds.
So have we started all these projects?
So sub area 2 right now, we're kind of still in the funding phase to build it. get where we need to be according to the warrant article. The warrant article called for a 45% grant.
Which is the strain development, right?
Yeah, it's up to this, the strain development up to Greenwood Acres. It also encompasses the area that used to be Main Street Phase 2. And we applied for a USDA grant. We qualified for a 45% grant match, but they approved us at, I think it came out to about 8%. So that doesn't hit us to the amount we need to. Right now, we were just looking at alternative ways to get to the 45%. There are some combinations of ways to do that. But at this point, we're not likely going to be moving forward this year or next year because there's just not a way to get not a quick way to get to the 45% grant match.
So that was a $6 million project.
So tell me how that works in the finances. I'm confused on that. So it was a warrant article that was approved, right? And so we had to have matched basically 45%. But the rest of it, that hasn't been, has the taxpayer been taxed for that? or-
No, because we haven't been paying any payment back.
Okay.
We have expended some money in order to get some of the design work done.
That's under a different part of the project. We received a USDA study grant, I think in the amount of $30,000. And that actually got us to the point where we are right now. So we have multiple USDA and Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund grant applications that have been kind of ongoingly approved. And we have another project with the wastewater treatment plant. We're doing a CIP that's funded through the USDA.
This $6 million warrant article, that can continue for one more year.
Okay, before the voters have to approve it again.
Yes.
So we have a year to get that.
Only one more.
Only one more
Right.
year, unless we have a non-lapsing and give a date in there, a specific date, and I don't believe that would have a non-lapsing date in it.
It's a relatively short window on a project
Yes,
that big.
so we're applying for more grants.
Yeah, we were, from discussions with USDA, they had a list of criteria for us to hit to be able to get to the 45%, grant eligibility. Some of it was, our debt was too good, but it'd be really because we had been ignoring our wastewater collection system and it was in such poor condition. And so our rates were low, but we have this huge pending liability on our hands. So they said, you need to have, your rates need to reflect, your debt needs to reflect, and you need to show progress. So with the sub-area 5 project, we used Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, which had a 12.5%, basically it's a grant, but it's a loan forgiveness. That added to the debt of the sewer system, but it also showed that the town was making progress in replacing the sewer system. A number of other check boxes we hit, and when rubber hit the road, they gave us 8%. So it was, it's a difficult position. One of the things they did give us for feedback was, potentially this is a small project. 6.3 million is a small project to them. If you came back with a larger project, then perhaps, we could give you the 45. So that's one of the things we've been looking at is, do we want to combine all of the projects or half of the projects for the next 10 years or 5 years into one, but then phase them out over a 5-year period anyways. That way we could hit the 45% and not have an immediate impact on the rates slower. So it's something that we're working on and looking at. So we'll either come back with a new financing package that includes a piece of or non-USDA, or we'll come back with a different project that encompasses a larger geography.
I'm looking at my phone just because we had another warrant article on there. I'm trying to, for the waste management study.
Yeah.
That was 30,000, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and the study has been.
Wait, this is wastewater collection, or wastewater treatment.
Management, asset
Oh, the
management.
asset management. So Doug will be able to talk to the progress of that. Yeah, that's complete.
Yeah, we just got the contract in place with the Frames group to proceed on that. Spent a lot of time reviewing what the work's gonna be. But it's actually a part one. Next we'll be going into like a preliminary engineering plan So the asset management, along with the preliminary engineering plan, will give us kind of an overall facilities plan for the treatment plant. So yes, we're definitely proceeding.
Just getting
We wanted to run them both together, but the funding I think we were pursuing for the phase 2 part of it didn't get approved. So we can-
Right, we're going through another cycle. That's for, so there's the collection system, and then there's the treatment plant, and that's for the treatment plant. And we just completed our lateral asset study, which was for the collection system, and that was really, you can talk about it, you want
Yep.
GPS.
Yep, we spent a lot of time in the summer, investigating our sewer system and documenting the conditions.
So they opened and photographed every sewer manhole, which, a rough
Lovely
number,
work.
you
Yeah.
remember a rough number of those?
Total, I think we have 800 to 900 of them.
Yeah.
So we probably did 3/4 of them.
And a lot of them were paved over, so they had to be dug up. And,
Yeah, it wasn't just popping a lid open. It was 3 foot of digging.
Yeah, so that puts it into the GIS, and then the operator who can know exactly what and where is, going on. Or we still do a call card system, where if there's a manhole break or, there's a sewer line break, they can go up to the public works garage. You almost like Dewey Decimal System, find your card, you can pull out some photograph from 1950, and it'll tell you what the material is and what condition. But the only way to update that is actually updating.
You still using those tie cards?
Tie cards.
I have not seen them.
'Cause
I think we've imported them.
I know that one
Yeah.
time we talked about scanning and linking them, so
Yeah.
that they were available in the GIS.
And that's
So you
our
don't have to
goal.
look in the cards.
That's our goal.
Now it's all in the GIS
Yeah.
itself. And that's what we did. It was a good data collection effort.
So now it's live, real data that you can use.
Updated current.
Yeah, on site.
And on the top, they got Henry Shervin's phone number and Larry Jackson's phone number.
Yeah.
Any more? You can find them.
Henry, do you got?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
but that was grant funded as well. With the,
Sorry.
yeah.
Want to roll on? to
So the
one?
default budget is $138,851 more than 2019's approved. It's a 15.75% increase. Has to do with the payments for the sub-5 project with the interest and the estimated sub-area 2 project. And this budget is paid for out of sewer users, septic haulers, and grant funds. So,
And where is the money that we're setting aside every year for plant and system?
what happens is 9% of the bill that you get goes into the replacement fund. So that is part of the sewer user's fee. So that very top line, that's where the 9% is factored in.
Okay, and so, I mean, so at the end of the year, when this is all worked out, it's gonna be roughly 9%
Added to
surplus
it,
or
yes.
whatever, that then gets put in a balance sheet somewhere as a reserve account, correct?
Yes, right now, in the sewer user's collection account, connection account
You were
is
right the first time.
$83,322.
That's all?
That's as of right now.
Okay.
It doesn't add in 2019's connect, this is just connection
Okay.
money. And some of it's been used over time.
Okay,
We have in the replacement fund,
okay, yeah.
we have 220,000.
Yeah.
We have set aside, prior to that 220, we set aside 135,000 for ongoing projects, just to use toward ongoing
So
projects.
there's actually
355.
55.
And then we have a reserved fund balance that's for sewer use only, is $494.74.
494.
So, we have some funds set aside, which is how that the centrifuge back years ago
Yeah.
was able to be repaired. It was a $500,000 repair that we purchased.
Yeah, and recently it was $60,000.
Yeah, although when we did that centrifuge deal, it may not have been the best decision to pay cash for it. We probably would have been better off financing that in some fashion, not depleting
And
it.
possibly getting grant monies toward it,
Yeah.
if we had financed it back then.
What year was that?
I want to say it was 12 years ago.
It's definitely end of life right now.
Again,
Yeah, we have a project now, we're looking at really changing the system to a
Sludge dryer.
sludge dryer system that's a hydraulic press. And we would get we'd save a lot of money on just even transportation and treatment of the five solids. Yeah, Doug's got a quick ROI on
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, that centrifuge gives us about 15% solids. And the system we're looking to get to gives us 98%.
Yeah.
Real dry stuff.
You know, the dry, Class A fertilizer, pellet, at the end of it, so. Perfect for you guys.
Yeah, we're looking at new technology to,
So the 2020 sewer proposed budget has quite a few adjustments in it because we've adjusted a lot of the percentage that is coming from the sewer users for staff that are dealing with different parts of working for the sewer system or doing billing for the sewer system. We also have an estimated increase of 3% on our plant operation. We have an increase in cost in the software support and utility management. That's our billing for the sewer users. And then we have printing of the bills. No, property liability, I'm sorry, property liability has a 3% increase. We've added for rentals and leases in here $1, because at some point our sewer jet may break down and we may have to rent one. So we may have to, at some point, be able to have the capability of doing that. Continuing on, of course, the debt service I already explained. So the sewer system budget, the proposed is $196,564. It's a 22.29% increase from the 2019's approved. And the monies for this come from the sewer users, sewer grants, and from the water pollution grant, when we get that, the septic collars.
So will we anticipate any increases, sewer rate increases in the coming year?
If this budget is passed, yes, in the sewer users.
And how much would that approximately be?
I would say, probably around 20%. Just looking at the budget.
So later on in this meeting, I want to ask, have a discussion about getting a variety of people around the table that the rate increases or the rates, or every property owner pays them something. It's not just our tax rate where we have Littleton Water and Light, we have sewer, we have all these other bills that come out. So later on, that was the reason why I was asking what you project this to be. Not only our tax rate, but our sewer bill would be increasing. And sometimes I don't think well, maybe it's just me. I don't think about that. So, or haven't taken it in, haven't processed it properly. So I just wanted to make sure that we all have that on the
the
radar.
cost of living here or having a house here.
Yes,
House
yes.
are all,
Yeah,
pieces
I
of
just
pie.
want, just want that to be out there on the table.
and you mentioned also the county part, that
And the
makes
county,
you have a little
and,
better
yeah.
understanding on.
Definitely.
Now, remember, 138,000 roughly is the debt service caused by improvement projects that have taken place, that were voted on by voters.
Correct, but I think we just want to have everything transparent, you know.
You're in the sewage project now?
Yes.
Yeah.
The
But-
sub-area
Yeah.
fire project.
Yeah, even though they're voted on, but I mean, they've all been, it wasn't really like we had an option not to do them.
No.
Right.
Well, if the voters voted no, we couldn't do them.
Or couldn't do them, but, I mean, the system would have been failing. Right, so I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't like getting a new police cruiser that we could live without, I mean, with the sewage deal, if we weren't maintaining the system. And then if we don't maintain the system, there's also a negative to that too, right? If we have some issue in the future and whoever it is doesn't feel that we've done our due diligence on maintaining the system, then we could put ourselves at risk of not getting
Definitely.
the assistance at that point in time that we would hope to get, right?
And I mean, exactly, so like to qualify for that 45% grant, like we were talking about. And there's even more dire examples, which I have been reminded of recently about if there's issues, like for example, at the wastewater treatment plant, we can actually be forced to do upgrades, you know, at our expense, which can be very expensive. And, you know, part of us trying to be proactive is doing the CIP study up there and starting to really plan out how to extend the life of that facility and do our due diligence so that when we go up to USDA or other agencies, they'll be ready to participate.
Well, there's fines too that could be, you know, I mean,
Sure.
we're trying to, you know, push back any possibility of being penalized with a fine. But just keeping that on the table that we have the sewer increase.
I mean, a tough spot that we're in with that is, you know, I was reminded by the USDA this year when they were giving us their generous 8%, sarcastic, but was that, you know, every year delay, the construction estimate for increases 2.5% to 5%. So after a couple of years of going, it starts to make real money on these large projects.
I think that's the challenge, right, of the whole thing, of everything we're facing now. We spent a lot of years of neglecting things, and we're trying to go forward with a reasonable approach to getting caught up again, because, I mean, we neglected a lot of things for a long time.
I'm not sure on the sewer part that the things we've knowingly neglected or chose, not to say neglect, but made a decision on. I'm not sure on the sewer that it was always a cognitive decision. I think sometimes we just didn't understand it as much as we should have or needed.
Well, it's one of those things, I think, especially sewer, I mean, you don't see it every day. If it's not backing up in your basement, you don't know there's a problem, but we need to be more proactive about looking to make sure there's no problem coming up.
That's right, I want the big picture.
I have one more question.
I would say minor, but
Well, the sewer user fee increase, the revenue, that's the revenue side, right?
Yes.
Is that based on any increase or just the anticipated additional usage?
That sewer users increase is created from the budget. This is one of those simple, what I call a revenue neutral budget.
Yeah, okay.
So whatever we have for a budget is what gets billed out. So when we have a budget expenditures of $1 million minus any other revenue that is listed in the budget, the amount that we bill out for is that sewer user fee.
Yeah, so that was backed into by the total expenditures. Okay.
yeah, so on next year's sewer bill, the rate per cubic, whatever.
Gallon or whatever it is here.
The rate per whatever increases based
Yes.
on that.
And
Yes,
also has to do, right, with revenue, where revenues are, if we're low in revenues, that the users have to make up the, you know, say
No.
for instance, septic is low.
no, the way it's billed out is based on the budget that we have.
So in essence, we're going from $881,710 to $1,078,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is somewhere around 15%, right?
Wow. You don't ask me.
I believe a high estimate, which I don't like to do.
15 to 20.
And theoretically, just like with the town's operating budget, with the surplus funds, the select board can make a determination whether or not to use those to offset. The same thing goes for here. I'm not saying it's a good idea, especially with all the projects we have coming up, but that's
I think
always.
sometimes we just have to face what we have to face. But on the other hand, I just want everyone to know what we're facing, so.
I believe at this point, if there's no further questions on the sewer budget, Doug has some equipment information he would like to hand out. I don't need one.
Robert, do you need one?
Well, I think I actually have one.
Now, do you need one?
Yeah, I mean, is there a copy of the?
Here you go.
I gave you the information from today.
Does anyone know that?
You want to get that?
There might be an extra page in there.
Does anybody not have a copy who would like?
The part was represented twice in there.
We've got 2 more copies up here. And this is a kind of a representation of what I did for the select board on this. One of the things that I was trying to get a grip on coming on as public works director is kind of what are the needs of our department. And it seemed like right off the bat, the condition of our vehicles, our fleet, just popping to the top as a priority item. So I took on the task of, and there's been prior work on this by prior folks in public works to try to put a list together of our equipment, and there's a lot of good data that we already had. It was just a matter of trying to assimilate it all together, put it on a list, and and I worked with Bill Sargent, our operations foreman, to start to formulate what we want to see in a vehicle replacement cycle for public works fleet. What had happened over time is it looks like maybe 10, 20 years ago, we had kind of a system where we were staying on top of our vehicle replacements and not falling behind. It looks like over the last decade, that's been the case where we have fallen behind. And so what I wanted to do was get a better feel for what that was, what it looked like, and I basically put together a spreadsheet. I thought that was the easiest way, multiple spreadsheets actually. So I am giving you a lot of information to look at.
Like the small page as opposed to the big page.
Well, let's start with the 8.5 by 11. The 8.5 by 11 is an addendum from what I presented to the board. I had somebody come to me and ask, I'd like to see information on the mileage and equipment hours on your fleet. So this is basically an addendum sheet that basically provides that information in the column on the right. But one of the things that really caught my attention this year in particular was the fact that we had 3 vehicles that didn't pass inspection to the point where it was worth replacing and investing the money into them to bring them back to road worthiness. So those out-of-service vehicles are listed down at the bottom there.
And what caused those vehicles to be non-inspectable?
2 of them had issues with their frames.
Okay.
They were double frames, and the rust had caused the frames to hit the U-bolts, I believe. That was for both the international trucks.
Yeah.
The other one, it was just in very poor condition, had a blown engine, and just looking at the costs on it, we decided it wasn't, it had failed inspection for some other parts too. I don't know if they were major items, but.
Because obviously the frames are the,
Yeah.
for those of you who are.
I think the frame was welded 3 times I loaded on that truck.
Those of you familiar with Toyota pickup trucks and their kind of well-known situation they've had going on for the last 10 years or so. I mean, most vehicles go to the graveyard with the frame still intact. So, the frame that doesn't
Right.
last, that's I mean, Toyota's situation, I guess, was a metallurgy issue of some sort, that it wasn't very good metal to start with or whatever, but if there's something that's worth addressing on a major piece of equipment is making sure that the frame stays intact. And virtually everything else can be addressed. It's addressing the frame is a huge challenge and, you know, a tough thing to make the decision on.
Yeah, appreciate that. So anyways, this is a listing of our whole fleet, from, it's our, not all of our equipment, but it's our primary equipment. We have a lot of other smaller equipment items, but basically from oldest to newest. Went through and listed the purchase year, its current age, also the mileage now in hours if you want to see that.
Does this include parks department?
Nope, this is just Public Works. So this, so that's just 8.5 by 11. If you go to the larger 11 by 17 sheets,
Just, that Ford 550 dump truck, that was the warrant article last year. Is that the warrant article last year?
the one at the very bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay, so that's what the voters approved.
yep. We have not, the truck got delayed, we have not actually received it yet. We've received it, but we're getting it equipped for plowing now.
Okay.
It's actually not on the road yet.
So our plowing fleet ideally is going to be how many six-wheelers?
Right now, it's 4 6-wheelers and 4, or international large truck, 4 6-wheelers and 4 of the 550s. 4 big, 4 small, or needed, I call that. And we have a 350 that can plow, but it's not a primary route truck.
Okay. And one of the 550s is a backup.
Yep.
And
It's a backup for the new, it is our current backup.
Yeah.
It's the backup for the one that we just got bought. It's the one that was cycling out. We do keep, what we do try to do is we try to keep one of our trucks that's being cycled out as a backup. We'd like to have a backup of our large truck and a backup of the small truck. Just for, particularly with the age of our fleet, it's been really critical. And this year is important to us because we don't have a backup for our large truck for the 6-wheeler. So the ones that we have that are all getting fairly old is what we've got. So we tried to change our program this winter cycle, something different. We were trying to arrange it so our mechanic is actually available more in the shop to be available quickly for repairs, particularly to the big trucks. And again, that's already happened. Even with the storm, we've already had trucks that were back in and the mechanic had to be on them. So, but we've changed our program around where we have him in the shop more because he was running the route himself. So we're making changes to give ourselves in the best position to keep this age fleet going, at least for this winter cycle. But we really, the whole idea of this whole plan though is to try to look at the bigger picture of what we have, its condition, and trying to look forward to what we need to get to have a good replacement cycle on our vehicles. So the first sheet of the 11 by 17 is really just an inflation sheet. So I actually went out and looked at an equipment index. It's called a producer price index for construction machinery and equipment. So I looked at a 10-year index on that to come up with basically just what the schedule would be for taking the current value, what I'm calling replacement. There's a replacement cost column 2020. You'll see in there. We basically went through and costed out all of our fleet of what it would cost today to replace that particular piece of equipment.
Include any trade-in or any scrap value or?
No, unfortunately, no. We didn't, unfortunately, it's such a hard number to pin down, we didn't include that. So that's one thing that is missing from this analysis and any sort of cost recovery. Some of this stuff's only good for scrap now, stuff that hasn't passed inspection. We're actually using them as parts vehicles for the rest of the fleet. If we were to cycle equipment out sooner, then there is a market value to sell it. So again, it gets really down into what kind of replacement cycle do you want to run with. Just as a general rule for this plan, we have 7 years, is a replacement cycle for small trucks and 10 years for large trucks. Apparently that's the plan that we were kind of holding to maybe 20 years ago, back under Larry Jackson's timeframe. We're trying to get back to that. That's still kind of long. You know, I've heard recommendations to go with something even less than that. It's really that decision point of when you think your expenses or your repair expenses are getting too much and you can still get a value for that vehicle on the market and sell it and apply that to the new. We tend to hold our equipment longer. That's just, so I was trying to strike a balance. I went ahead and chose 7 and 10 for our cycle, for our trucks. All the other equipment, backhoe, excavator, grader, some of the other equipment has all different replacement cycles. You'll see that all in that column there. For example, our grader is a 25-year cycle that we'd like to see for it. And it's currently 30 years old. So the goal in doing this was to come up with an inflation rate, a reasonable inflation rate. So that's the first sheet. If you go to the second page, I basically started, well, one of the things that came up was, well, if we did have a good fleet, if we were in good shape, and we wanted to just be able to just budget annually, kind of like a capital reserve, if we were looking at a capital reserve type budget for public works vehicles, if our fleet was in decent shape, and we were just doing a normal replacement cycle, what would that look like cost-wise in terms of an annual budget? So the second sheet there is that. I kind of ignored that, just presumed our fleet was in decent shape, oldest to newest, and kind of laid out based off that replacement cycle of 7 or 10 years or 4, whatever it is for that particular piece of equipment. I basically started going through the whole fleet and just doing a systematic replacement of that fleet. So really the thing that's important to look at is the blue box down at the bottom where it says 13-year analysis. So this analysis went from 2020 all the way out to 2033, 13 years. I looked at basically what the average cost would be per year, and this includes inflation, that cost index for the fleet. What would it cost us to, on average, to do that? So under a capital reserve, kind of looking at it, we'd be looking at about $260,000 a year that we would typically spend to keep our fleet current on that replacement cycle.
So the beginning would be $275,000 in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, it ranges up and down. As you can see, some years are up, some years are down. So I looked at it more from an averaging standpoint.
No, that's fine, but that would be the first item.
That's if the fleet that we have right now was up to par.
Right. It's kind of pretending.
Yeah, this doesn't really,
It's a capital reserve analysis.
yeah, okay.
Right.
Doesn't apply to us because our fleet's old.
Again, I'm just walking you through the things that I wanted to take a look at from my analysis.
A couple of questions on the grader and the super. Have you considered other like lease options or rental options due to the low usage annually?
I don't think, I haven't.
Because I'm just dividing out the hours of the grader. Looks like we put maybe 2 or 3 weeks on it a year over the 30 years. Maybe it sat for a year, maybe it didn't. But that's a couple of weeks, as well as the sweeper, which has more miles and is newer. So you're obviously using that more, but just for consideration with your annual cost.
Okay.
Maybe it may be more cost effective to rent it for 2 weeks instead of purchasing it for the year.
Well, I know the sweeper we use on a seasonal basis, and we use it for cleaning catch basins, and it's a vacuum sweeper, so it's.
I would guess that was kind of the grader.
But the grader might make some sense.
Do they use that in the winter when they're clearing like Main Street sidewalks?
No.
No.
No,
The sweeper? No.
There's not the grader.
The grader, we've used it in a pinch because we've had so much equipment breakage. I know that, I think it was, the winter before last, we had 3 pieces of equipment broken out on Main Street at like 2 a.m. And we had to bring the grader out to
Finish up this week.
yeah, to try to do the scraping. But
So,
it's a good point to take a look
and
at.
one of the other thing is sometimes I look at the usage in a higher use vehicle, more miles per year, would be the one I would want to replace. So,
like a six-wheeler that has 120,000, that's less than 10 years old, or about 10 years old, and I want to replace it with one that's only got 80,000. Or switch it around.
Yeah, I know that we've had some issue with some, like one of them we had to roll over with a bent frame. I think we had to, we did some major repairs on it. Then maybe like the 80, I couldn't speak to.
But I like the presentation, it's very good.
This isn't a full financial analysis, this is just for me looking at a cycle for replacement and trying to assign some costs into it. It's not, it doesn't get into the leasing option or the bonding, some of this, it doesn't get into that level of financial. That's something that needs to be discussed further and brought to the board for discussion. This is just me doing an analysis, rough analysis of our fleet and trying to get an idea of what we need to have.
And I see we have any of that 10-wheeler upgrade that George Palmer had actually presented 2 years ago.
Right.
We would still like to try one of those and see how it...
Yeah, we still have a desire for wanting to upgrade to those and...
Well, or at least to get one and to experiment with it and see how it does on various routes.
We have 2 out-of-town routes that can very strongly benefit from a 10-wheeler, in my opinion.
Just sand hauling, I assume.
Yeah, those routes are long enough, they actually have to run them in 2 parts. With the 10-wheeler, they can do it in 1.
And I think the other point that Joe had made too was that the resale potential on those is much higher than on a 6-wheeler. Something that actually be much more interested in buying one.
Of course, that assumes you cycle it through in a reasonable amount of years.
Yeah, but at any point in time, it would be worth.
Well, none of it's out of service and scrap.
Yeah.
Well, you might be surprised how many of those might come back.
Yeah.
It's sometimes a little different, situation, but I can't remember what Joe said the actual purchase price increase was, but it wasn't huge.
Yeah,
No, it's not a big price difference.
30,000 or something. Yeah, and if you look at the cost of ownership, well, there is a, like you're saying, there is a initial more expense. It's cheaper. It's a less expensive vehicle.
I don't have the price in here, it's $175,000 for a 6-wheeler, $190 for a 10-wheeler.
So 15 grand.
And it's double the capacity.
Right.
It's double the capacity.
And you would easily get the 15 grand back
Easy.
and when you sold it.
Yeah, in the cycle time, it holds double material, so you go twice as long without getting salt or sand. You can have it.
We haul our own sand during the summer, so, that cuts our trips in half. For hauling sand.
We're gonna run out of time.
Yeah, we're running out of time.
Take your 1 year and 3 year and explain.
Yeah, I'll just go through it real quickly. The 1-year plan, which is the next sheet, is basically to just strictly follow that plan identifies that we need to replace 9 pieces of equipment this year at a cost of $1.4 million. So that's what that plan is, just looking at what we need, right? If we had the ideal budget and we could afford it, here's what we would ideally like to do to be current. And then from there, it just projects out. Unfortunately, that same bump hits again in 2030, so if you look in 2030, there's another huge cost.
Because it replace all those same vehicles.
Right, so it has no balancing, it's not good on the tax base for equalization, none of that, but it was just a straightforward, here's what it is. The next sheet is taking that same thing and taking that 1 year of replacement cost and balancing it out over 3 years. And we picked the pieces of equipment that we thought we'd want to get done, our priority pieces for the first year, 2020, 2021, 2022. So the same 9 pieces of equipment are spread out over 3 years. And then again, after that, they're all just cycled according to the replacement cycle.
Would you actually do 3 10-wheelers though, or would you really want to start with 1?
And we're starting with 2.
I mean, yeah.
Yep. We have 2 trucks, 2 big trucks, and a backhoe.
I feel like really with the 10-wheeler, there's nothing to prove. I mean, almost all public works departments that do what we do or less have already made that switch, and it's a much smaller town I spoke with when we were looking at it last time. They were like, this is a no-brainer. Overtime, fuel, maintenance is cheaper, better turning radius. There was no reason.
Just in the time traveling back and forth to the garage to get more supplies, you're saving in those,
The turning radius.
whatever it is, for time.
Or very little. more.
I can't.
And the gas.
Yeah.
Can't have a good turn radius.
Well, no, it'd be longer, it'd be bigger kind of radius.
They were overstating their issue.
If you look at any contractor haul material, we're rolling 10-wheelers, so that kind of helps, helps you understand the business side of it.
There will be more on this as we
Yeah.
get closer to going through the warrant articles.
Plus the fact that we have the road improvements, that will be a warrant article,
Right.
and they'll be back
Correct.
to talk to us about that.
Yep.
So,
And then the last sheet is, what I did was kind of took the same, it's the same 3-year catch-up for the first 3 years. But I tried to do just a little bit of massaging of the replacement cycle in the future years, just to try to, again, achieve kind of a balanced, replacement cost year by year. Again, it was me just kind of playing with the numbers, just to try to keep it a more, kind of closer to what, so the first 3 years is, there's definitely a large amount of money, over close to $500,000 over those first 3 years. But then after that, I was trying to equalize it out a little bit, just with my own playing with the numbers. But I know there's better ways to do that, and Karen's had
it's a good
some.
start.
So it's just my start, and this is just my analysis that I wanted to present to the committee, and
Thank you very much.
We'll do that.
And we hope to hear more, we'll hear more of your story.
Appreciate it. This is really good information.
Very detailed.
Do you think it's realistic, if God were to get what he wanted, can that be?
Yeah, I think if we don't, we're in trouble. It's gonna be more expensive. Really the goal is to be able to have these kind of plans updated every year with what we actually break down and replace, or what we present to the select board before budget season, and have them adopt it as this is the plan we support, and then bring you the articles or the budget that needs to take place. And we look forward, I think at the next meeting is going to be looking at different financing options that they want to consider. For example, if you do the 3-year balancing combined with a 3-year or a 5-year lease purchase, then it kind of makes that initial slug hit less. And potentially, the debt could roll on to the debt cycle, just as some of the larger debt that we've been paying for over a decade starts to roll off. And, is there a correlation between the large debt that we've been paying because of the dam and our inability to replace equipment? I mean, there's probably a little bit of correlation there,
So that's when we really look at the debt schedule really closely to see how we can insert different things.
Okay. Dr. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was great.
Drive safe out there.
Chad? And the last name?
No.
Hi, Chad. I just couldn't remember your name.
That's
Why don't you
okay.
guys come on up, please?
She's been sitting on it, I'll help down the other meeting.
But if you want to grab a chair so the camera can see you down
Yeah, there's
there.
one next to Carrie. if you want to-
Yeah.
I'll bring my phone here.
And we have Bill here.
Yeah, I know.
So do you have the budget already?
I didn't print one because I figured it usually was,
Extras?
well, no, just the latest and greatest. I got the email, so.
Just want to make sure he's got the, I have you.
I doubt it.
Sorry. Do you have the extras? I believe I do. Let's see. There is, I thought there was an extra one hanging out.
No, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm good.
And so here. Fire start.
Before we launch, could we have an introduction for the new people that are out there?
Chief, you have to introduce yourself.
I'm Chief Joe Mercieri. This is Captain Chad Miller. This is firefighter Bill Littleton, one of our on-call people. And because I don't know the new gentleman.
My name is John Schultz. I'm new to Littleton in the last 3 years and new to the committee in the last few weeks.
Shane Alfieri, I've been living in Littleton for about 10 years. I think you guys came and put out my charcoal growth file.
Looks familiar.
You didn't find me, so thank you. I'm all for you on this.
Dan?
Yeah, the insurance,
You and Jim McMahon.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm ready to talk to you about the default budget. Default budget, there's very few changes in. We have a little bit of change in the rate in the retirement system. We have a small reduction in building repair because there was a one-time item in 2019's budget and it's been repaired, so that was taken out. So the default budget on page 5 of this budget is $12,563 less than 2019's approved budget. It's a 1.12% reduction. On the proposed side, in the fire department, we have some changes in staff. And some of these changes, of course, have changed some of the rates of pay of some of the individuals. So you see a reduction in the wage line for permanent positions. There is an increase in the part-time, formerly called call company, and that's based on some rate adjustments.
A part-time firefighter now, Karen, is paid,
The pay range can range from, if I'm correct, it's $10 an hour, up to 1973.
and if they're filling a position on the shift.
1973. They need to be certain qualifications to do that. They have to meet certain requirements. Do you want to tell Steve what the requirements are? Because I can't remember them all off the top of my head for our part-time firefighter.
Part-time firefighter 1, minimum EMT B.
So to fill a shift, they need to be firefighter 1 and
EMT. Yes.
And that's a recent change, isn't that, with the MOU?
Part of the part-time.
Or the-
I believe that it's added the EMT component
Yeah,
as, since that's not part of our primary mission.
so that changes because of this.
It was added a EMT.
Right,
They already needed to have the firefighter component to it,
right.
to begin with. We do have support staff that are also call company or part-time firefighters that might do other duties. You know, maybe drive a truck, serve water at a fire, you know, be outside documenting things. So there are other pieces that people are able to do that wouldn't be shift qualified for someone.
They're still firefighters.
Yes.
They still perform firefighter duties if they have the cert to do so, the training. I mean, basically, there's two or three factions to make up the department, obviously. There's full-time, on-call, and introduction of part-time or per diems. So basically, you know, an on-call person still has the capability to perform full firefighting duties as long as they have those 8 certification and they're SCBA qualified. They can. Others will drive a truck and use the truck, pump the truck.
And that's,
We're just talking shift eligible individuals. Those are the key words.
I was picking up on that, and that was the reason why I was asking if the MOU, that changed some of the requirements for the shift.
And what that means
requirements.
for new people, or people that understand what shift eligible means, means when a full-time firefighter goes off duty for whatever reason, and that vacancy is not filled by another full-time firefighter, then shift eligible individuals can in fact fill that vacancy.
Yeah, but anybody who fills that vacancy is gonna get paid $19.73 an hour.
The rate, yes.
If they're filling that shift.
That's correct.
Full-time shift.
Yeah. I mean, think about that, that's $480 a week for filling one 24-hour shift. Should be a pretty good recruiting tool.
Well,
You think so, but
it's actually, in all honesty, the rate's a little low as compared to others, but it is. I mean, it's a good opportunity for someone to get their experience and get their feet wet, obviously, but it's just a matter of...
Somebody living in Littleton, having another regular job, if you would, they want to be involved in the fire department, and if they could pull down a shift a week or a shift every other week,
Sure, more power to them.
$500 is not exactly a kick in the ass.
No, it's not.
No.
Problem is, though, you gotta have all these certifications.
Right.
Which takes time, a lot of time.
And
that
some may.
That seems to be the problem now. You don't, to get new individuals to come in, they don't have the time to put in to go to classes at night, weekends. And then you have employees who won't let them leave. It's tough finding them, but yeah, they can make an extra bucks.
Might require a little nurturing too.
All right.
well, we're doing that.
So we also have a little bit of an increase in the shift coverage, part-time firefighter. We have a big change to the overtime line. And that is a review back at historical and open shifts. We have,
When it says, Ken, 29% out to ambulance, what is that?
yes, we looked at how many staff members were on the fire department currently, and including the ambulance people, the people that would be firefighters and people that could run and take care of the medical services that might be needed in the town. And we estimated that 29% of the staff are people that would be on the ambulance based on the number of staff and dividing it into the number of people that are full-time. So that's how we came up with the 29%.
So what does it mean, though, 29% out?
Means that 29% of the overtime would be put into the ambulance budget. And you're gonna see the ambulance budget or EMS budget as we get down further in this.
That's kind of like the sewer thing.
Yes, yeah.
Except that there's an increase instead of a decrease.
There's an increase in your full-time total cost. There is a percentage of that increase going out toward the ambulance service. So when we get to the ambulance budget, you're going to see that.
So that's, okay, so we should probably just walk all the way
Yes.
through it and then come back, okay.
Okay. So we've got an increase in mileage reimbursement. Some of that's training related. We have a retirement adjustment, and most of that adjustment is made up of the overtime number, because we do pay retirement on overtime work. Continuing on to the next page, we have an increase in the training expense, and I highlighted the line that came to. Under telephone communications, we have a reduction here. It has to do with the dispatch service contract. Under electricity, excuse me, not electricity, heating fuel, we have an increase in that cost. Have an increase in pellets for heating. We have an increase in the sewer.
I think you were right the first time, Dan, it's the electricity that's up, not the heating.
Yes, you are correct. Electricity is up. Yes.
You were right the first time.
Building maintenance, we do have an increase here. We have a slight decrease in the cost of the pellet boiler cleaning, but we have an increase for materials to do with the exhaust system. In dues, we have a reduction. There's no changes on page 4 or 5. On page 5 of 5, we have an increase in vehicle repairs. We have some known repairs that have to happen. We have an increase in equipment purchase. We need to get some pagers, and this is year 1 of a 2-year plan to replace the pagers. The increase in the fire department budget is $46,751. It's a 4% increase from the 2019 approved budget. There are no non-union wage increases. There's no union wage increases in this budget. It's only the non-union and the part-time and the shift coverage that has increased. The overtime, of course, has increased. Going to move on to the dispatch and the ambulance. And there's a second page to this EMS. So under the default in dispatch, the same numbers, the same as what it was last year, we propose a 6% increase. Every year for the last 5 years, there seems to be an increase in the cost of dispatch. I budget an increase, but the increase is still higher than I budget, so we end up overexpending $4,000 to $5,000 roughly every year in this line. So this year I estimated a 6% increase. There is no way to know for sure how much the increase is going to be until we get the budget from dispatch. And that doesn't usually come to us until March or April, which is far beyond preparing for the budget. So I have to put a best guess in there, and this coming year, I'm hoping that I'm going to be within that number that it seems to increase by.
So this is totally outside of the county tax?
Yes. Now it's based on usage. Based on number of calls and other factors that go into it. Andrew is talking about meeting with the individuals down to the county and seeing what we can do on some of that cost.
Look at terms, or if there's some other method.
I have a question. So that's the fire department's portion that we pay, right? And do we have the police also?
This includes all, police and fire. Yep. So under the ambulance, in the default, we have budgeted in medical services for 3 full-time firefighters, your health insurance, your life insurance, disability insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and the Hampshire retirement system. I couldn't budget anything more than what we spent this last year in this line. It's the same line as, or same amount as last year. It's as close as what we could get to the number, and it is a full year for those individuals in the default. In the proposed, we plan on having a warrant article to have a special, not a special revenue fund, but a revolving fund. So it will be a separate budget, very similar to the Parks and Recreation or similar to the transfer station, only the revolving fund, the selectmen on that warrant article will be named as those authorized to expend from that budget. So if there's more revenues that come in than what we budgeted for, the selectmen are authorized to expend from those. It will become part of the operating budget if this is approved in 2021, just like the Parks and Rec become part of, their budget becomes part of the operating budget. Even though we look at their budget as a revolving fund, they have commissioners that are authorized to expend from those funds. When we look at what comes from the taxpayers, it's a portion of their budget, it's not their whole budget. Similar to the transfer station. The difference with the transfer station is, at this time, they're called special revenue fund. So you move on to the next page. This is the EMS fire-based medical services budget. We are estimating that there's 9 transports to the local hospital per week, at billing at $700 a trip. We're estimating that we're going to get, at some point, maybe some transfers facility to facility. We might have, we have chargers for other coverages in other areas. In other words, towns or other entities out there may hire our medical services and pay us a flat amount to use the medical services, to use our ambulance, or to use our staff and ambulances. Right now, we have budgeted $34,109 because we have 2 towns that are now having some of our ambulance EMS support with us, so they're paying us.
Under contract.
Under contract. So the revenues from the medical services, we're estimating $361,711 for 2020's proposed budget. The expenditures, we have our 3 firefighters, we have our callback time, we have our holiday pay, we have our part-time factored in here. We are hoping for 5.5 individuals, because it does take time to hire some of these individuals, 29 hours a week. We're estimating $20 an hour. They're going to be either EMTB or 8 EMTs or paramedics. They don't necessarily have to be firefighters. And we're estimating, and we have a factor or a total in here for $165,880. Overtime, we do know that we're going to have some training for some of these individuals that might come on board. So we're estimating overtime cost for that training $6,500. And then we factored in the 29% of the overtime budget for the firefighters. That's in the fire budget. We come up with health insurance plans and based it on current individuals that are working in this type of position. We have a number for health insurance of $27,904. Have life insurance, disability insurance, Social Security, Medicare, and the Social Security is basically only on the part-time individuals because full-time firefighters do not have Social Security cost. The town does not have to pay a cost on that. We have retirement in here for the full-time individuals. Workers' compensation, it's just an estimate. Until we actually have somebody working in that position and have the payroll audited for that position, we won't know exactly what it is. It's an estimate.
But you know what the rate is?
I do have that information, but I can't remember exactly what it is right
But as we
now.
talked before, I mean, on our workers' comp policy, how many classifications were
There's about
allowed,
17 classifications.
that are allowed? Okay. And you mentioned it the last time too, that there were some misclassifications that you had
Yes.
discovered that actually resulted in
Savings.
savings.
Yeah. Under uniforms, we do know that we'll have to provide uniforms for these individuals. We have 3 full-time and 6 part-time individuals. We have mileage reimbursement, because at some point there may be some training that they need to go to and have some mileage reimbursement for that. Telephone and communications, we have a hotspot for the use of the computer in the ambulance. We have cell service. We have ID data processing services. Property liability insurance, we know we need to insure our individuals, for property liability and the ambulance and all of our medical equipment that we'll have on that. Gas and diesel, $4,800, it's an estimate. Small equipment and supplies, that's replenishing what we have that we're using up. Annual PM cot and monitor, PM you'll have to ask the firefighter, the captain and the chief what that means, because I don't know what PM means.
Preventive maintenance.
Okay.
So like the cots are checked annually to make sure that they're safe. It's also, it helps if there was a negative event due to a cot, like a, stretcher failing. Well, we follow the manufacturer's recommendations for annual service, and so we're not neglectful of anything.
So the car meaning a litter?
Like a stretcher, like a wheeled, what we put the patient in and load them in the ambulance with. Yeah.
We have some vehicle repair and maintenance in this budget of $3,500. Medical supplies, $6,000. Dues, licenses, and subscriptions, $1,000. Ambulance, large equipment, that's going to be a separate warrant article. And I'll explain a little bit further about that down below. Professional services outside billing. So we have, with a company contracted for billing for the medical services that are performed, and they charge 4.5% of the billing. So whatever we take in, we know that we've got some cost to that to go back out. I know in the admin office, we do not have the staff to do that. The medical billing needs to be confidential. It needs to be followed through, making sure people are paying and monitoring and reporting of where people are on their payments, how far out they are. It's more or less a collection agency to some extent as well. So the estimated cost expenses for the fire-based EMS services is $524,549. Offsetting the revenue means the amount coming from the taxpayers for the people and this budget is $162,838. Now you look down below on the bottom of this, I have noted that the ambulance separate warrant article, the ambulance itself is going to cost $82,754. So the first, in that warrant article, that amount is going to come out for, or be part of that warrant article. So the total cost, tax impact, for what we've developed for fire-based EMS is $245,592. Last year's, or 2019's approved budget for ambulance services, medical services, was $240,935. So there is an increase here, and I'm sorry I didn't put the increase, but the increase is very small. Now with the revolving revenue funds, the money, if there's more money than the 327,000 or 361,000 that I budgeted in here, if there's more money that comes in than that, it will fall into its special reserve fund balance that can be used by the selectmen for medical services, fire-based EMS. It can be used to buy some new equipment, or at some point it might be used to pay more on the lease or pay the last payment on the lease. It can build up and continue building up until maybe buying a second ambulance if we had to, in order to be able to do more fire-based EMS.
So with this ambulance that's in the warrant article, that would be our first Littleton-owned ambulance.
It's a
If
leased
passed.
ambulance for 5 years, and at the end of the 5 years, it belongs to us. It does have a non-appropriation clause, so if the voters vote it down, the ambulance either goes back to the lease company, or there could be a possibility somebody else make the, it would be wonderful, lease payment for us. Some donor, it would be nice. You can always be optimistic.
Well, where is she getting that?
Carrie's doing that.
Being the optimist?
Yeah.
Yes, that's good.
But if it is voted down, there is a couple things that might be able to happen if some donor came forward.
Franco?
I've just got a question on the 327,600. It's based on 9 transports per week.
Per week.
Is that based on our short history so far? Is that a realist? Where does that number come from?
Say we're outperforming that.
So that's a conservative number of transports.
But the, in all, I think we will outperform the number, the total number. I think that the average per week is a little low, but the cost per trip may be a little high.
Okay.
But in general, I believe we will outperform the
And the
327.
collection rate could be a question.
But, so sure, but we also know we're entering people's payment method into the system as we're preparing everything for billing. And I have to say that I've been quite pleasantly surprised at the strong payer mix we seem to be finding here. It's better than I had expected.
Right, but obviously it's not 100%.
Sure, no.
Industry-wide.
No, the 3.3% of patients are uninsured. That's a really low number. And of that, I don't recall the percentage off the top of my head, but a relatively low number of patients seem to be underinsured as well.
The other question is though, how much their insurance policy authorized to be paid.
So, sure, and that gets a lot more complicated, but we're right now around 43% in current commercial insurers. That's like your Blue Cross Blue Shield, Harvard Pilgrim.
But if Howard Pilgrim says we're gonna pay $480
So
a trip.
typically, and we haven't signed these contracts will end up coming before the board, and it'll be based off of what our billing company recommends. A pretty common number is 50% of what we bill. We bill $1,500 per call because we know we get half of what we bill. It's kind of a crazy setup, but that's the way healthcare works. At least it does in the division of Medicare that we're in, which is Part A.
But these revenues then reflect what you actually expect to collect, not what you're billing.
Correct. So you can bill anything you want, but
Yeah,
you're really limited in what you collect, which is why what you bill is almost
Pointless.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it, and we could spend a couple hours. I'm happy to run everybody through it, but it'll take a couple hours, and I don't think you want to do that tonight, but,
Do that tomorrow.
But the short answer is this is what you expect to collect. I want to make sure I'm
Sure.
clear on that, not what you're sending out for bills.
as of right now, with our short history, I would expect that we would outperform that number.
I don't know about anybody else, but Karen, to walk through the numbers from the beginning on the fire department, on the 29% out to ambulance, you extrapolate all that, all this comes down to,
What?
I mean,
What are you asking?
well, I'm not sure what I'm asking, that's the problem. Because, I mean, we have expenses in the fire department.
The overtime in the EMS is estimated as $35,464. Is that what you're?
Okay, well, to go back to your $70,000 figure, 70,000.
Page what?
On page 1 of 5 of the fire department.
Yeah.
So we're increasing overtime by $45,000.
We're actually increasing the overtime lines more than that, but 29%, so
Well, I'm not sure what this, but then also you see we have a negative figure down there, 29% out to ambulance.
yes. So if you totaled up all of these overtime lines that are in here, you're probably going to come up with a number about $95,000 in overtime. 29% of that overtime, we believe, based on just employees. So 3 new employees divided into 10 employees, example, total number of firefighters, full-time staff, excluding the chief, we're gonna come up with about 29%. So 29% of the overtime will be attributed to those 3 new hires that are used for the ambulance.
And that 29% is in the EMS budget.
Yes, so it's moved from this budget to EMS. Now, I
So-
could have
so
done that,
That's the negative 28,964?
28,960.
Okay, so what's the reason for the difference between the 28,964 and the 70,913?
Well, we're trying to account for how much is those 3 individuals that are been hired because of the EMS
Right.
change.
70 firefighter now, right, then the remainder EMS attributed.
So the 2 of those added together come to the 98 you
Yeah.
added up.
Yeah,
I mean-
when you add up 10, we'll do it quick.
Well, she's adding, I can give you some like tactile reasons why it's also.
For
Oh, is it your question?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think where you're going with it, Steve, is like, the responses, or fire and EMS are going to calls, right? And so why is only 29% of the overtime, including fire, when they're supporting EMS? Why is that not going to EMS?
Because it was based,
For revenue, I mean,
because it was based on the 3 new hires.
okay, but there's still, other firefighters that are responding to EMS calls, right? That could potentially be paid overtime.
Yeah,
That, I guess what I'm saying is, like, last year, they had about 1,000 emergency calls. 30 of them were fire and about 700 were EMS rescue related. So I guess what I'm saying is, a lot of the calls are more EMS related than fire. So I think where Steve was asking is, would more of the overtime be under EMS than fire?
I guess I'm actually asking, why is there any overtime increase to the fire department? Why isn't any of the
Well, I
overtime, why
figured
isn't
it'd be
all
flipped that
overtime
kind of
increase
Majority would go to
going
EMS.
to EMS, because that's the reason we're hiring those people in the first place?
Just, I guess the question, why book it as a expense in the fire department? Instead of just booking it as an expense in the EMS budget?
Well, in the fire department, we've also had considerable overtime in the fire department as well. It's not just EMS. And we've had overtime in the fire department before we even had EMS.
So
Your increase of the fire department, if I'm reading this right, the budget for overtime for the fire department is 24,786, but we significantly outpaced that.
Yes,
So that you're trying to, as I understand this, you're trying to make the firefighter budget more realistic to what the overtime actually is.
yes,
And on top of that, there has to be overtime for the EMS.
At one time, the fire department overtime budget was $60,000.
yes. And at one time, the fire department overtime was close to $100,000.
That's right. And obviously that's driven by a lot of language that we've talked about and that I still find very challenging to understand. But, you know, in terms of rates for shift coverage or whatever, I mean, so I don't know how the hell we get a handle on that, I mean, other than by acquiescence to some degree. But,
I mean, I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. Some of it is probably some of the, like you're alluding to, some of the shift coverage and rules and how that works. And some of it is, I think, just in the schedule itself, there's built-in areas where there's overtime available because, you know, we don't have a full-time person in that shift. And in the past, we've taken a look at that to see, hey, why don't we hire another firefighter and take a look at it. It was actually cheaper to maintain an open shift that's available for coverage by an existing firefighter with overtime than to bring in a new person.
because you have to give that person 6 weeks vacation a year.
We have to give them benefits.
Those costs.
Well, and that too. But I'm just saying, just the 6 weeks vacation that you have to give them, that somebody else then needs to cover.
I just said it's not 6 weeks vacation.
6.2.
So to go back to Jim's point, so the 29% is, I want to make sure I'm clear on this. It's because the 3 new hires are because of EMS. Therefore, that's impacting the overtime of what we already have 83,000 of overtime prior to that.
Yes,
So what you're saying is that because there's 3 new hires, that's 29% of the staff, and that's why 29% of the overtime is allocated to EMS.
yes.
Because without them, that wouldn't exist.
Correct. And in the future, we may have a more realistic view of what the actual allocation of overtime is based on the scheduling of EMS versus.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Are we tracking time so that we can actually do an analysis of this next year?
Yeah, good question.
So you can, and it does get, you know, we track apparatus hours and personnel hours when actually on incidents, so. But I don't know that it'll get you the number you want, so.
And
I don't know.
It's something.
I don't, yeah.
We're gonna look at it.
I used a formula that I believed at least now I could use and come back to the reason why I used it was because those 3 firefighters became 29% of the total staff that was at the fire department. So that's why I used 29%. When I first started developing the budget, I had everybody, all of the expenses, all into the fire department budget. And looked at it that way and started taking out 29% of everything. And it just didn't make sense because if EMS wasn't there, what still would be the cost of operating the fire department? You'd still have fuel, you'd still have electricity, you'd still have sewer, you know, you'd still have building maintenance. So I had to look at what would be the baseline of the EMS being added into that building.
So, this is really simplistic. So, at one time, this ambulance, the $240,935 was all that we were paying for ambulance, correct?
Correct.
EMS, CMT, ambulance, everything, that was it.
I wouldn't
say that.
say that.
I don't know, that's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
because there were times the ambulance was not available, either due to concurrent calls or calls in other contracted communities where our staff would first respond, stabilize the patient, use supplies that were purchased outside of the contractor, And our staff rode it to the hospital with one of the other ambulances from another community that came to town. So we were providing that service. The only piece we weren't doing previously is loading them into an ambulance that we owned and bringing them to a hospital.
But you don't know what percentage that was. I'm being very simplistic here.
No, I couldn't tell you what, like, off the top of my
No,
head.
there wasn't an additional cost associated with it.
Well, there probably was with overtime and everything
But if
else,
you-
but
the-
I'm just trying to say, $245,000 is what we're paying over what we would have paid for the ambulance.
No.
$5,000 more.
You paid us
Yeah.
basically $240 last year,
Right.
Okay.
and we're saying about $245 now.
And we're estimating that based on revenue that we're being conservative.
I was just looking at the two pieces.
And
And we
even-
were
Getting
sup-
lost.
yeah, we were supplanting the contracted service, but we were not getting any of the revenue, for that particular service.
So I identified times where the contractor wasn't available because it was a single resource, but there's plenty of times where we responded to a system where they would have needed more help than the two people that had, or they needed more personnel to go to the hospital in their ambulance. So, it gets hard to try to say, well, how much was that worth in the fire department budget in 2018, for an example? Back before things had changed. And so when you said, is that the only cost? Well, that might have been the only check you felt was written, but lots of other services were being provided at other levels that were already accounted for in the budget.
I do know of times that the fire department had gone with the ambulance company that we had used and had to take the patient out of the environment they were in, take them down the stairs, and help get them into the ambulance because there wasn't enough ambulance staff and they didn't have the equipment that we had on the fire truck to get that person down.
But we weren't able to bill for any of those types
No.
of things.
Correct.
So the way it was done previously, if the ambulance wasn't available, you'd have to roll with a fire truck and firefighters to respond to an emergency medical?
We would more often than not co-respond with them right from the beginning. So it wasn't necessarily a wait for an assistance call from the ambulance, although we didn't necessarily respond on every call because of the triage level provided by New Hampshire 911, if it was available, and the call came in through 911. But, so essentially, we would co-respond on the good majority of the calls. And we would be there right away to see that extra help was needed, or if concurrent calls happened, we would decide right then on scene, how are we gonna deal with this? Maybe it made sense for the ambulance to go to the second call and for the fire department to remain at the first one. For example, if the first call was a lift assist, well, we're more than capable to assist somebody back to their bed or their chair, where the ambulance could go take the second call, or if the ambulance was committed to the first call, the fire crew would automatically know they'd have to respond to the second call, whether, regardless of the nature of that incident. So.
Of course, is everybody okay with running over? Yes, tonight?
Can we run over for another 10 minutes, everyone? Is that okay?
Is that right?
There's no other meeting that I know of.
That's right.
No, as far as anybody else's personal commitments or
So
whatever.
all of our full-time staff is cross-trained and licensed as EMS providers at various levels.
And is the fire department like a traditional fire department in Littleton where firefighters stay at the fire department for like 3 days straight? That's kind of
24 hours.
24 hours.
Yeah, we do 24-hour shifts. Sometimes it feels like 3 days.
3 8-hour days. So Karen, to continue to walk through the numbers then, okay, so you have the fire department, we can talk about the 29% to $79,000 as it may be. Okay, so then how does that move on to the next sheet, where we're on page 1 of 1, where we're talking about ambulance, where you've got the $240,000 and you've got the 3 full-year employees totaling out at $240,000. And then how does that $240,000 migrate to the next page where we have EMS fire-based medical services?
That's where I was confused.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, how,
We had to, and we have, because we had a budget last year for medical services, we can still have a default budget for medical services. So
which is which one?
the default budget for medical services is this one, where it says dispatch at the top and ambulance at the bottom.
Okay.
So I took the 3 individuals that we have for the full year. I took $49,322 for health insurance. We have life insurance, disability in here, Medicare, and New Hampshire retirement system. We have no offsetting revenue in this. So what would happen if the default budget passed? And what would happen if the EMS special revenue fund failed? So we have the default budget. We could still do EMS out of the fire station because we have enough money budgeted for that. That's part of the default budget.
The same 240 that we paid last year?
Yes, same 240.
I had budgeted for last year.
Yes. So we still could do the fire department. The difference is we wouldn't have that special revenue fund that's out there that we're putting on a warrant article.
Okay, so that page, that's kind of a standalone fallback.
Yeah, that's
position.
a,
Okay,
That'll show up in the budget.
okay, but then we move to the EMS page.
right.
If the EMS were to pass,
This is what this would go
the other
away.
page becomes non-operational.
It becomes, because the default budget did not pass.
Well,
Now, if the proposed budget passes and the EMS budget doesn't, you may end up without an EMS service.
say that one more time?
So if the proposed budget passed
Yes.
Unless.
and the special revenue fund or revolving fund did not pass,
The warrant article.
The
for
warrant
revolving fund,
article.
Okay.
does not pass, you may not have an ambulance service in the town of Littleton.
There's a way to resolve that.
Say again?
There's a way to
There's a
resolve
way to resolve.
The way to resolve it would be, if you take your default page and you look at the proposed, we have everything zeroed out. So if we were to put in the proposed, the amount of $245,592, which is the equivalent of the proposed article. And then in the articles had the language that said, if this article passes, the proposed budget would be reduced by $165 and change. And then in the article for the ambulance say the same thing. If this article passes, then the proposed budget would be reduced by $80,000 and change for the price of the ambulance. That would be a way to make sure that ambulance services are provided no matter what.
So one way to think about it too is that we paid our contractor $240,000, but that wasn't what they paid. You know, their expenses were $700,000, and they used what they billed the patients for that gap between 240 and whatever the rest of their expenses are. So the thing that town manager is saying is you put all the expenses in the regular budget. Every penny of what you think you might need, ambulance, staff, personnel, everything. And then if these other things are passed, like the revolving account, well, cut $327,000 out of the budget. If, if approved, budget
Well,
will
it
be
actually would be 240.
240. I don't mean to quote the wrong number, I apologize. And then also, if the ambulance warrant, passes, we'll cut that out of the budget as well.
Right. That's an option then.
So there's 2 different ways to look at this.
So
Well, we really want, financially, there's one way to look at it, right? The fire department's budget is $46,000, or whatever it was.
Yeah,
And the ambulance service that we were paying before is up by $4,600. 600. So all is said and done, the total is increased by about $50,000.
Except we don't have the salary increases for.
Right, but that's the same all the way through the budget, yeah.
That would be a separate warrant article, and
Yeah.
the decision, if it gets to that point, the decision will be the taxpayers.
So going back to what you're charging the other communities, where is that?
That's on the EMS, the one, 34,109.
Okay, so what are the other areas and how did we come up with that number? Who are the other towns, Sugar Hill?
Easton and Sugar Hill.
And how did we come up with that number?
We used their last contract price.
With our current, or previous provider.
Right,
Current contracts extend, go till April 1st.
April 1st.
And you can collect the revenues from those trips as well.
Yes, correct.
To offset, so I'm going back with what you were saying, this is the expenses that the previous provider, but they were getting the, making up the gap with the revenues. So, I mean, are we actually charging enough there? I mean, are we charging enough? I know we can get the revenues, hopefully, but is that enough? Is that
It's too soon to
realistic?
tell. And I think part of what we have to do is identify, with a little bit of history, that there's a lot that can go into that can be beneficial or detrimental to either the contractor or the receiving community. And so I'd say it's too soon to tell whether we know whether that's a good number, but it was a number based in history from 2 EMS contractors, and so I think we felt pretty comfortable moving forward with that, and I know those other communities seem to feel comfortable with that amount as well.
So we're getting paid by those communities on the contract amount to provide services, but we're also getting all the revenue. We're not sharing the revenue.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and when we put these numbers, so these numbers are good until April 1st, which they're both traditional town meeting communities, you know, with a calendar like ours. So just like we get to do for the voters of Littleton is not have any additional cost than what was being budgeted before for ambulance service. Those communities, Sugar Hill and Easton, already have those funds set aside up to that amount, you know, based on their approved budget. So when we did this, we kept the number the same. We don't, like Chad saying, we don't have enough data yet to figure out, you know, is that a fair number? And so once we get closer to the April 1st area, you know, or after a year of service, I'm not sure how long it'll take to get a history of.
See, I just don't want to spike, you know, I mean, that has gotten our dander up, you know, with how many providers, you know, that we've gone through, because realistically, we found that the number was far different. And so I'm saying, is that so low that we're going to eventually find out that we're going to have to increase theirs and they're going to be mad at us and we're not going to have that? So that's why I was asking, where did this number come from? Because tradition and history has proven that every year we have received an increase from our provider. And so I'm okay.
Yeah.
Won't say anymore.
Yeah.
No, that's all good point, Diane. And on the face of it, I mean, my gut feeling tells me that it's a low figure.
It is, it has to be.
I mean, but, you know, and obviously one that they feel comfortable paying, because I mean, if you can cover your needs with that expenditure on an annual basis, that's a pretty safe.
I would love them to offer that deal to us.
Yeah, but I think if you do it on population, figure out, you know, like you gave it 240, you're pretty close.
Yeah, but,
I would
but
say
it isn't all on population though, Bill, because I mean, even the fact that you exist, you have a liability. You know what I'm saying? Yes, it certainly is bigger you are, but you know what I'm saying? I don't think it's exactly has a linear relationship with your population. I think it obviously grows with your population, but the fact that you're a town to start with, day one, you have a liability that you want to be able to provide that service.
Cost of readiness.
Well, the other, you know, it's a great point, because it's not just about what the costs are. There's a value side of it, that, you know, that they shouldn't I'm not trying to pit us against them.
No.
But they should realize all the value of contracting with us, because otherwise they'd be spending significantly more. We should benefit from that and help our budget.
And help them at
So,
the same time.
I understand what you're saying, but you had to start somewhere, right? This is what they had in their budget.
But I'm just kind of throwing caution out there because we have felt, I don't know, under the gun for how many times, you know, and I just don't want to start a bad relationship with.
No, you want to make sure you have an open discussion.
I'd say that we're having an open discussion right now about what metrics we might use to determine a cost to build another community. So you're kind of, I think this needs to be thought through a little bit more about whether you want this to be an open process or kind of a closed process to determine what metrics you want to use and what would drive those metrics.
Well, I'm also saying that our past providers have found that it has to be more than just what they charged us and the revenues. They weren't making it. And so that's out there too.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm still anxious about whatever, that our cost of providing those services is going to be higher than the cost of providing those services of the people we've used before. Right? Our structure is more expensive.
But yeah, you've got other options too later on. You could have another town, good size, that EMTs and A's and paramedics are hard to come by. I think there probably will be some other towns to be interested in service.
We've gone from a town that uses mutual EMS response one to two times a week, where we would have to request our other ambulance come into our community. That was lost revenue to that contractor. Our crews are invested enough in the system and in our community that we work hard, we work fast. We say that we're doing a great job. Every call is being looked at by us and our medical director from a quality standpoint, which has never happened before. There's been zero quality improvement process. And we're finding out we've had to call mutual aid, I think 3 times since we started in August. Substantial turnaround in that. And we're actually providing those services to these other communities. So there is a certain relationship that is evolving and changing. And it's not lost on me that the spikes are important.
By medical records that he's talking about the
physician at the hospital.
So our relationship with the hospital in providing a more rapid and good response and healthy outcomes.
What kind of success have we had, if any, in terms of recruiting area personnel to either join our medical service or our fire service?
I'd say it's been limited so far, but we haven't put a full court press on yet.
Because, I mean, there must be people in the area communities who are currently working in their EMS volunteer call company service, as it would be.
Yeah, and I think that you're finding, though, that the reason we may be more involved in the communities is because those people have really dried up in those communities too, and they're probably at a tipping point crisis as to whether they're hiring full-time or whether whether there's more of a regionalization push or something like that. So there aren't as many of those people out there as you might have expected and I would have expected. So.
But there's got to be a few.
Sure.
And they got to be talked to. But in Mr. Dugan or Duggan, you remember one of his findings was, he said that of all these he's done, he says he had about 20 findings that cried out for regional service.
Yeah.
And of the 20 that cried out for regional service, and he said this, I'm sure half jokingly, 1.5 came to fruition.
I think he said 50, to be honest with you, that he's done, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, there's a lot of them, one way or the other, that said this needs to be a regional program, but for various reasons did not happen.
And we've essentially started that with contracting with Eastern Sugar Hill, even though it's a historical contract that has been in Littleton. I mean, we're kind of continuing that, and it's a start, and how we move forward with that. We're still kind of getting our feet underneath us too. We only have one ambulance. We can't extend too far.
So Gentlemen, thank you. The other side of it, I'm sure, is that we're gonna have warrant articles for equipment, right? So, besides an ambulance, are you bringing any other warrant articles forward this year?
Well, I have one article, we're discussing the grant match. We don't know if the grant funds that are currently in a grant fund can be encumbered or not. So we're trying to get a ruling on that. Reason being is that money was earmarked as our 5% of the share of a federal grant. We were denied this year. We didn't make it last year. Statistically, 8,000 departments applied for some kind of fire apparatus, whatever it was. 3% of them were awarded. All right, so you can see how difficult this procedure is. We're going to give it one more shot, but in order to do so, we're going to need that 5% match. However, we have to do it.
And the warrant article, because it hasn't been expended yet, basically has gone away. We covered it, we had it 1 year
Right.
as a warrant article, and the second year we could encumber it, but you can only encumber it 1 year after the warrant article is approved, and we did that.
Right.
So without a purchase order or a approved grant, we weren't able to encumber it any further. I tried, but the rules are what
The
they are.
rules, yeah. Okay.
And I'm just handing out a couple things. One is glossary terms, which I said I'd PDF, but we are having a problem with the copier right now to do that.
Yeah, you're okay.
And then, I might have. The other item is a summary of what we're looking at for warrant articles. It's only a summary. Selectmen haven't even discussed them. So I have a couple there for selectmen.
Just saying.
And we put a lot of things in there that may be removed. So pass those around if they, I don't know if they all have them or not. So the glossary of terms that I handed out was something I said on PDF, but as I said, we had problems with our copier, which also does our PDF. So I wasn't able to do that. And then the budget 2020 draft budget and warrant articles is just a summary that we put together at this point, may not include everything. It's things we anticipate, like petition warrant articles. Numbers, we put in some numbers from the same warrant articles that were last year from the petitioners, not knowing for sure what they were doing yet.
So is Mount Washington coming to visit us?
They are planning, they haven't confirmed the date. I threw out 2 dates for them. One was the last meeting in November, the first meeting in December. I have not got a confirmation on that. I do have one petition warrant article person that is asking for more money, so I told them that they would have to come in to speak with you if you wanted them to. Let them know. Pathways Pregnancy Care Center. Now, they presented their paperwork. They presented their paperwork last year. They also gave it to us this year, but they're going to ask for $3,200 instead of $2,500.
So what are your thoughts on that? Should we have them come in and present the reason for the increase, or are we good with having seen their presentation last year?
$700.
Yeah, do you want them to come in? Okay, that's fine. I
I
don't want to make the decision by myself here.
I'd say either way. I mean, they gave a very good presentation last year. And I guess my gut feeling was that, I mean, obviously they provide a very good service. I mean, that type of service that we can provide to young people is, when it comes back in many other ways beneficially, so.
And the voter usually tells you what they want. I mean, it's quite obvious. They know who they want to give money to and all that stuff.
They did see it as an advertisement
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well,
of
that's
their,
a
of their
chance, yeah.
services.
That is true.
So what,
I was on the same page,
as Steve, it's fine, just let it go. Okay.
unless they have something weird. Service that's
Yeah.
changed or want to present on a public
Not
forum.
not to throw it all on you, Diane, but at the risk of
Okay,
throwing it
yeah.
all on you. You know, I mean, if any of these that want to come, like Aaron said, sometimes just to have a chance to present, they
Okay,
probably
I'll
like.
ask, I'll
But
ask.
if we were to schedule a separate date for it, so we just kind of get them all in together.
So the other thing too, very quickly, and I'm probably going to touch the third rail here. So going over what our increase, the projected increase, we don't know for sure yet, of 83 cents on the tax rate. And with all of the infusion of the monies, and we still came up with 83 cents on increase projected on the tax rate. Where were we? What happened? And part of it is the county tax, and I don't know, but we really need to take a look and understand how we got there. I was wondering if it would behoove us to ask a commissioner from the county to come and maybe give us a little bit of a inside look at what may be coming down our path, because all of this together is coming out of the same pocket of the taxpayer and the property owner, but we've not done that before, and it may help us say, if there's going to be a huge increase, maybe we can give some feedback to them, and also it'll help us fold it into our overall picture of what we're asking locally for the taxpayer. So what are your thoughts? Should we see if they would like to come, or should we just say good enough is good enough and leave it be the way
I
the
think
tradition?
it'd be interesting if one would come, and I'm not sure if we're talking how long, half hour, 45 minutes, but it'd be nice to hear from them, their story, what's driving them, and we've never really had that conversation, them coming to us, we've gone to them.
But it was a big increase this year, and we probably didn't have any clue that it was coming down the pike. The other part was Littleton Water and Light, and I don't want to get into their budget. I absolutely don't want to get into that at all, but we had a fee service, what's it called?
Rate increase.
Rate increase last year. So again, that's another thing that kind of comes out of the same pocket. Would it behoove us to ask one of the commissioners to come and maybe talk to us about that, to see if there's anything that we can expect in that area. The other thing is how do they coordinate with the Public Works, because are we paying for some things essentially twice, you know, if you're resurfacing part of the road and then they have to come and dig it up and resurface it again, it's our money twice. And so I'm not sure, we've never asked them to come before. Is that something that anyone would be interested in? And you don't have to comment and you don't have to comment, but what about the committee? What do you think?
Diane, you got 3 commissioners, right? And they're appointed by the selectmen, right? They should be reporting back to the town. We've always had this problem, always. And they've more or less done what they want to do now.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get into the political part of it, but we had a rate increase last year. We had a huge increase at the county level, and we had a big increase on the tax rate for a variety of reasons. We should be aware of all of this coming forward. So
They should come in and see the selectmen, and get a report on those concerns.
okay, so I'm taking that as I'm not hearing a resounding no. I'm not hearing a resounding yes either. But
I think if you could arrange it, and I think we should try to do it a separate day so that we don't jam things in.
right.
But I think if you could get the water and light to come a day, if we have the commissioners somebody from the county come the same day, and we could have a half and half meeting, that would be,
Because,
But, and one thing, I think you gotta go through the chain of command, because commissioners work for the selectmen. And maybe better
Well-
start with them.
if you see no issue with me asking on that basis.
No, I don't think that is the chain of command anyways. You're the budget committee, and you want information so you can make informed decisions about your budget. In my view, it's entirely up to you if you want to ask them. Whether they come or not, that's up to them, right?
Right.
But it's
I may
entirely up to you.
may not go anywhere,
Yeah,
but.
it's entirely up to you whether you want them to come and present before you. I certainly don't think that's a chain of command issue at all. I do want to say that we're working hard to improve that communication and working relationship between Water and Light and the town. I think we're going places with that. I think they're receptive to it as well. But the budget committee has a job to do, and that's part of your equation.
That is part of the equation.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. Whether you want us, whether the selectmen want to meet with them or not is irrelevant if the budget committee wants.
Okay, what do you guys think?
I've never seen a commissioners meeting, so I'd be interested to see what their plans are for the next year and how their rates.
Sounds good?
and I would say, if you could get them both the same day, that'd be nice, but that's not a deal breaker. I mean, if it's just better to work out that way, then.
All right, that's good. Well, I want to thank everybody. Thank you. So, meeting adjourned, right?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the overtime.